In television history, there are certain moments that stop you cold, where you realize nothing will ever be the same for the characters in the story. These aren't always the biggest battles or the loudest twists. Sometimes it's a single decision, a pause, or even a lie that changes the entire story. One scene, one choice, and suddenly the show you thought you were watching transforms into something else entirely. Breaking Bad had plenty of them, but one scene in particular stands out because of how quietly devastating it is. It's not a gunfight, it's not an explosion, it's not even a big reveal. It's a man standing in a room watching a young woman choke to death, and he does nothing. This 30-second scene changed everything, and most people missed it. In the scene where Walter White was watching Jane Margolis die, this isn't just another dark moment in Walter's transformation into Heisenberg, it's arguably the transformation of the entire show. Until this point, you could still debate Walter's morality. Was he doing this just for his family? Was he being forced into darker situations by circumstances beyond his control? But you didn't realize what really happened here. The second Walter chooses not to save Jane, the debate ends. We finally see how far he's willing to go. By this point in season 2, Walter and Jesse's meth business is shaky, but survivable. Jesse has fallen in love with Jane, his landlord and fellow addict. Their relationship quickly becomes toxic, fueling Jesse's heroin addiction and threatening to derail everything Walter has built. Walter sees Jane as a dangerous influence, a distraction pulling Jesse away from the business and from Walter's control. And in many ways, she is. But what happens next is not a clash of circumstances, it's a conscious decision made in silence. Walter sneaks into Jesse's room, intending to patch things up after a heated fallout. What he finds instead is Jesse and Jane passed out from heroin. Jesse is unconscious, completely unresponsive. Jane shifts slightly in her sleep, rolls onto her back, and suddenly begins to choke on her own vomit. Walter reacts instinctively at first. He rushes forward, panicked, almost as if he is about to help. His hands twitch, his face collapses in fear, and then he stops. He pauses, watching her choke. He steadies himself. His expression changes. A tear runs down his cheek, but he doesn't move. He lets it happen. He lets her die. And then it's over. Walt walks out, leaving Jesse in bed with Jane's body. Generally, it's just a few seconds of hesitation, but narratively, it's the moment Walter's morality crumbles. Up until now, much of this story has been framed as survival. He cooks meth because he has cancer. He kills out of necessity. He lies because he feels cornered. In his own mind, and sometimes in ours, he is still the man who had no choice. But here, he absolutely does. Saving Jane would have been simple. Roll her over, clear her airway, wake Jesse. He had the chance, and he chose not to. Not only that, but he chose to let someone die because her existence was inconvenient to him. This is where Walter stops being sympathetic. This is where he steps fully into the role of a manipulator, not just of events, but of lives. Meanwhile, Jane's death doesn't just scar Jesse, it completely destroys him. Her father, an air traffic controller, becomes so grief-stricken that he makes a critical error at work, leading to a mid-air collision that kills 167 people. One decision, one moment of Walter standing still, causes a chain reaction of destruction far beyond what he could have predicted. From that moment onward, Walter is not just a desperate man making hard choices. He's a man capable of cold calculation, capable of letting innocents die if it benefits him. That makes every future decision more chilling, because now we know exactly what he's capable of. So did Walter let Jane die for Jesse's sake, or for his own? On one hand, Walter knows Jane is pulling Jesse deeper into addiction. Saving her would mean keeping Jesse chained to that influence, making him unreliable as a partner. In Walter's twisted logic, letting her die saves Jesse. On the other hand, Walter's actions serve himself far more than Jesse. By removing Jane, Walter regains control. He keeps Jesse focused on the business. He eliminates a threat to his empire before it gets out of hand. The truth is, it's both. Walter convinces himself that it's for Jesse's own good, but underneath that thin justification lies the real motive. Walter cannot stand losing control. What makes this scene so powerful isn't just the event. There's no dramatic score blaring, no dialogue to explain what Walter is thinking. You see every emotion flicker across his face: fear, panic, sorrow, calculation, and finally, grim acceptance. You almost feel the war inside his head as he fights his instincts to help, and when he chooses not to, it lands harder than any explosion or gunfight. It's also the show's way of telling us that this man is no longer who you thought he was. Walter White, the humble teacher, the victim of circumstance, dies in that moment just as surely as Jane does. At this point, what remains is Heisenberg. While Walter White's decision to watch Jane die reshaped an entire story, sometimes the moment is loud, fiery, and impossible to ignore. This next example takes us from silent hesitation to absolute destruction, and it's one of the most debated scenes in television history. I'm talking about the moment Daenerys Targaryen chooses violence. For years, Game of Thrones built Daenerys as a liberator. She freed slaves, she punished tyrants, she spoke about breaking the wheel. Even when she used force, it was framed as righteous, burning the slaves of Astapor, crucifying the masters of Meereen. She was brutal, but her brutality was directed at oppressors. By the time she sails to Westeros, she was carrying not only dragons, but also the weight of destiny. People had been led to believe she would be the hero, the one who brought justice to the Seven Kingdoms, but then we got to King's Landing. The city had surrendered, the bells rang out, signaling defeat. Lannister soldiers dropped their swords, civilians cowered in the streets. The battle was over. However, Daenerys sat on Drogon's back, staring at the Red Keep, the castle that represented everything her family lost and everything she wanted to reclaim. This was the moment she could have stopped. She had won. Victory was hers. Instead, she snapped. With a scream, she sent Drogon diving into the streets, unleashing fire not on soldiers, but on the people. Innocent families, children, the very citizens she once claimed she would protect. And from that choice onward, Daenerys was no longer the breaker of chains. She was the destroyer of cities. This wasn't just another big battle sequence. It was the show turning its back on years of setup. Up until this point, audiences could rationalize Daenerys' harsher decisions. They were harsh but justified, cruel but targeted. But here, there was no justification. The people had already surrendered. The threat was gone. The throne was hers to take, yet she chose to burn them all. This was the moment the audience's relationship with her changed forever. Some saw it as betrayal, others saw it as inevitable, a dark seed that had always been there. Either way, the Daenerys we thought we knew was gone, so why did she do it? At first, she had just lost Jorah, Missandei, and 2 of her dragons. Every source of comfort had been stripped away. Also, in Westeros, she was never fully accepted. Jon Snow's claim to the throne left her paranoid and insecure. Moreover, the Red Keep represented generations of family trauma. In that moment, she wasn't seeing innocent people, she was seeing the symbol of everything stolen from her house. But beneath all of that is the truth. Daenerys didn't just lose control, she made a choice. The show makes it clear. Her face hardens, her grip tightens, and then she acts. It wasn't madness out of nowhere, it was a decision. And it's that decision that destroys not only the city, but also her legacy. Once the fires died down, nothing in Westeros was the same. Jon, who was once her ally and lover, now saw her as a threat. Tyrion, who once believed in her vision, turned against her. Her followers were split between loyalty and horror. And more importantly, the audience itself was divided. The fallout of this one choice consumed the entire final act of the series, but this isn't the only scene that changed an entire show. For 3 seasons, Avatar: The Last Airbender built toward one mission. Aang had to defeat the Fire Lord and end the war. Everyone around him, including his friends, mentors, even past avatars, told him the same thing. Ozai was too dangerous to leave alive. He had to be killed. But Aang wasn't just the Avatar, he was also a monk, raised with a belief in the sanctity of life. Throughout the series, he struggled to balance these 2 identities, the spiritual boy who valued peace, and the chosen one expected to commit violence to save the world. That conflict came to a head in the series finale. In the final battle, Ozai unleashes the full power of Sozin's comet, raining fire on the Earth Kingdom with destructive force. The fight is brutal. For most of it, Aang is on the defensive, barely keeping up with Ozai's overwhelming strength. Then there was one scene you probably missed. Ozai accidentally strikes the scar on Aang's back, unlocking the Avatar state. Suddenly, Aang has the upper hand. He pins Ozai down with all 4 elements at once. This is it, the exact moment everyone warned us about. The moment he has to choose. And yet, Aang doesn't deliver the final blow. Instead, he pulls back. He refuses to kill. This choice changes everything. If Aang had killed Ozai, he would have won, but at the cost of himself. He would have betrayed his core values and become just another weapon of destruction. The choice would have ended with victory, but also compromise, a hero who saved the world by abandoning who he truly was. By sparing Ozai, Aang proves that his way of peace isn't weakness, it's strength. He finds a third option, something no one else believed possible. Through energy bending, he strips Ozai of his firebending abilities, neutralizing the threat without taking his life. And in that moment, the cycle of violence ends. This scene defines the message of the entire series. For Aang, he shows that true victory isn't about overpowering someone, it's about staying true to your principles, even when the world demands otherwise. For the world, the war ends without vengeance. Instead of creating another martyr or fueling endless retaliation, Aang creates the possibility of real peace. What makes this scene so powerful is how it reframes strength. Ozai represents raw domination, the belief that power exists to control and destroy. Aang's refusal to kill is a direct rejection of that worldview. He doesn't just beat Ozai in combat, he defeats his entire philosophy, and it's not easy. The Avatar state practically begs him to kill. His past lives urge him to kill. His friends prepare him to kill. Every external force pushes him toward the same conclusion, but Aang's decision proves that real strength is not about bending to pressure, it's about holding to your values when they are tested the hardest. Unlike other finales that end in blood or fire, this one ends in silence. No death blow, no final scream, just Ozai, powerless, staring up in disbelief. Instead of telling the audience violence is the only answer, it leaves us with something different. Sometimes the bravest act is choosing not to destroy. But sometimes the most dangerous choice isn't about life or death, it's about the truth. And that brings us to one of the most haunting finales in modern storytelling, Joel lying to Ellie. By the end of The Last of Us, Joel and Ellie have traveled across the country. They've fought hunters, soldiers, and infected. They've lost people, relied on each other, and built a bond that became deeper than either of them expected. Joel, who began the story as a broken father, now sees Ellie as his daughter. But Ellie's immunity carries a cost. The Fireflies want to use her to create a cure. The problem? The surgery will kill her. Joel has already lost one daughter. He refuses to lose another. Joel storms the hospital, gunning down Fireflies in one of the game's most brutal sequences. He reaches the operating room, kills the surgeon, and carries Ellie out unconscious. In that moment, he makes the choice for her, choosing her life over the chance to save the world. But it's the scene after that truly changes everything. On the drive back, Ellie stirs awake, groggy and confused. She wants to know what happened at the hospital, why they're suddenly leaving. Joel meets her gaze and delivers a story. There were others like her. The Fireflies had already tried, and a cure was never possible. For a while, the lie hangs in the air. The conversation dies down, and it seems like Ellie lets it go. But as the journey nears its end, she stops him. Her voice is softer now, almost trembling, as she asks him to swear that everything he told her was the truth. Joel doesn't hesitate. He swears. Ellie studies his face for a long moment, the weight of doubt clear in her eyes. Finally, she gives a quiet response. Just one word. Okay. And then, the story ends. Fade to black. This is a split in the relationship at the very heart of the story. For the entire game, Joel and Ellie's bond has been built on trust. They've survived because they relied on each other. But now, in the final moments, that trust is poisoned. Joel's lie protects Ellie, but it also robs her of choice, agency, and truth. It's not just about what Joel did at the hospital. It's about the fact that he can't bring himself to tell Ellie the reality of it. Because deep down, he knows she might never forgive him. And that knowledge reshapes the entire story. Joel's lie doesn't end with a quiet okay. It carries weight into everything that follows. He later gets what he wants, a daughter again. But this happiness is built on deception. The man who lost everything has now built his second chance on a foundation of sand. Meanwhile, Ellie senses the truth. Her silence isn't acceptance, it's doubt. That seed of mistrust begins to grow, and by the time we reach the sequel, it explodes into open conflict. Instead of a clean resolution, the ending leaves us unsettled. So when you line up these moments side by side, Walter's silence, Daenerys' fire, Aang's mercy, and Joel's decision to love, you see four different choices that completely change their stories. One shows the corruption of morality, one shows the collapse into destruction, and one shows the possibility of peace.